What's going on, everyone? In this video, I'm going to walk you through my latest full body training session. I've only got a few days left of the second phase of my natural bodybuilding competition prep, which is a maintenance block. I'm feeling both excited and a bit nervous about transitioning over into the third phase of my prep, which is where I will get back into the caloric deficit until the point of being stage ready. Check out my last video for more details on that. I've got to note that at this point in my prep, I'm feeling pretty good about my physique visuals. I'm sitting just above 190 pounds, and I'm feeling both the leanest and the biggest I've ever been at this body weight. That's likely an indicator that I've made some good muscle growth progress over the past few years since my last competition season back in 2023. And that's leaving me pretty excited to continue moving forward in the prep to the point of getting on the stage. The prospect of seeing improved visuals, added muscle, better conditioning is definitely motivating for me. Anyhow, before we continue and get into the heart of this video, if you find yourself enjoying it, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. Okay, let's get into the training session. First up are these Romanian deadlifts. This is one of those exercises that hits many different muscles, including the hamstrings and glutes primarily. They're the primary movers of the exercise, but also the spinal erectors and the traps as well. In doing these, my goal is to fight to keep tension on my hamstrings, so I move in the way that best leads me to that. As a bit of a side note, that's often how I think about moving during most exercises. I aim to move in the way where I feel tension exactly where I want it, and then I let that feeling kind of guide how I move, almost like I use it as a compass. To keep tension on my hamstrings when doing Romanian deadlifts, I make sure I'm moving purely from the hips, so no squatting up and down from the knees, and I do my best to keep my spine from rounding over. As I move both down and back up, I try to keep my chest and chin up and make sure to keep the bar right up against my legs. See, if I let the bar drift forward or if I let my chest collapse, then I would feel it more in my lower back and less in my hamstrings, and that's not my goal with these. As far as my rep tempo goes, I aim to move with lots of control, not super painfully slow, but slow enough to ensure I'm feeling tension exactly where I want it, and that I'm able to keep everything in the pocket. I'll move as low as I can at the bottom of each rep where tension is highest on my hamstrings, but not too low to the point where my back starts to fold over. Flat dumbbell bench press is next. At the end of the day, of all the different bench press angles to do this at, the standard flat press is my favorite, with maybe a super slight incline, say not more than 15 degrees, coming in second place. Any angle really above 15 degrees leads me to simply feel it less in my chest and more in my shoulders. And since I'm bench pressing to primarily hit my chest, the steeper bench press angles just aren't terribly desirable for me. You might have heard the argument that including something like a 35 to 65 degree bench press is worth doing, or even a necessity to hit the upper chest. But from my understanding, that's not actually true. While it's true that the upper chest is working in a steeper incline press position, it isn't necessarily working more than during a flat press. It's mainly that the mid-pec is just working less when you're on a steeper incline. And because the upper pec is working a ton during a flat press, aiming to also include a steeper angle press is just kind of redundant, at least for me. As far as technique goes with these, similar to what I mentioned with the Romanian deadlifts, I move in the way where I feel the highest amount of tension on my pecs. I rotate my hands so that the dumbbells are on a bit of an angle. I tuck my elbows just a bit, and I move with lots of control and even pause at the bottom of each rep. That does the trick for me. Leg extensions are next to hit the quads. This is one of those movements that isn't terribly complicated from a technique standpoint. The real challenge lies in enduring the massive discomfort of tension on the quads. Of course, that's a challenge that lies with all exercises, but without a huge technique demand, leg extensions really seem to highlight that challenge. That said, there are some technique basics that are definitely worth implementing to make sure you get the most out of doing these. Moving with control and moving with a full range of motion being the main ones. As far as the machine setup goes, I like to put the backrest as far back as it will go so that my hips are extended a bit. That setup probably puts the rectus femoris, one of the heads of your quads, in a better position to produce force and experience tension, ultimately, potentially leading to a bit better of a muscle growth stimulus. With that setup and aiming to move with good control and as much range of motion as the machine will allow, for me, this exercise is a matter of simply moving for as many reps as I can possibly tolerate. And I'll usually end each set with at least a few partials after I'm no longer able to do any more full range of motion reps. Chest-supported dumbbell rows are next. I've mentioned this in past videos, but one of the areas of my physique I've been giving a bit of extra attention to over the past few years is my back, and more specifically, my traps. This movement has been ideal to include in my program to help me hit those muscles hard. I include both this variation of rows and standard bent over dumbbell rows without the bench in my program. I like doing these chest-supported rows on the same day as my Romanian deadlifts for the main reason that the chest support, or the bench, takes out really any involvement of the spinal erectors. Romanian deadlifts hit those muscles pretty hard, so having the chest support afterwards helps me to get more out of my traps than I otherwise likely would from doing standard bent over dumbbell rows with having already tired out spinal erectors. Also, the angle in which I hit my traps is slightly different with these than with standard bent over rows, so there might be some merit in that slight bit of variation as well. When I do these, I like to spend an extra second or two at the bottom of each rep, where I can really feel my traps stretching out. And as I pull the weights up, I'm thinking about pulling up with my elbows, and I'll aim upwards towards my upper chest area to keep my trap fibers really in the line of pull. Dumbbell lateral raises are next to hit my side delts. Control and tension. That's the name of the game with these. I find that to reliably and consistently experience and feel tension on my delts, keeping the movement super strict and controlled is what does it. No swinging and no momentum. With the super strict technique, I prefer to lift with mid to high rep ranges and with loads that don't seem to be terribly impressive. Honestly, 20 pounds is the heaviest I've lifted with these in ages, and I don't feel like there's really much need to lift much heavier. If I was swinging and using momentum, then sure, heavier weights can work. But when the movement is super strict and controlled, there isn't much of a possibility really to lift that heavy. The side delts aren't an enormous muscle, and with the leverage of the movement, they can only move so much weight around efficiently. So here I am with 20 pounds for my working sets, followed by drop sets of 15 pounds. For both the main working set and the drop set, I do as many reps as I possibly can tolerate and will finish with as many partial reps as I can once I can no longer do any full range of motion reps. And that does the trick for me. Incline dumbbell bicep curls are next to hit, you guessed it, the biceps. Like lateral raises, my preference is to keep my technique super strict with these. No swinging and no momentum. That's just what leads me to feeling the highest amount of tension on my biceps overall. Also, like the lateral raises, I don't lift terribly heavy, usually not much more than 25 pounds at mid to high rep ranges. As of the past 6 to 8 months or so, I think it's worth mentioning that my left elbow has been feeling a bit janky. It's not injured, but when I move in certain ways, it does aggravate for some pain, which I know will lead to a real injury. One such movement is the highest or topmost point of pretty much any bicep curl variation. So to avoid that pain, I don't do that part of any bicep curl rep, and instead pause when I'm about 2/3 the way as far up as I can go. This is cool with me since the first 2/3 of the movement are where tension is the highest on the biceps anyways. So if anything, I'm moving more efficiently to stimulate the biceps on top of merely avoiding the elbow pain. And dumbbell French press is next to hit the old triceps. One of the nice parts of doing the chest supported rows, followed by the lateral raises, then the bicep curls, and now these French presses, is that I can just stay at one station at the gym. I don't have to leave the bench I'm at. And I typically use the same amount of weight with these as I do with the bicep curls, which is 25 pounds, which makes things super simple. Anyhow, the key with these I found, just like pretty much everything else, is to move with control. No swinging, no momentum. I move for as many reps as possible with control, and the triceps scream for the latter half of every set. This movement probably biases the lateral and medial heads of the triceps and maybe a little bit less of the long head. So it's worth mentioning for that reason. I also like to include an overhead tricep extension in my program as well to make sure I'm also giving the long head of my triceps some attention as well. And there you have it. Another training session is in the books at the end of this maintenance block before transitioning into the third phase of my competition prep. As the days, weeks, and months go on, I'll be sure to continue updating you on how my workouts are going and what my progress is like. So make sure to keep an eye out for all future videos and check out my previous videos as well. If you have any questions about my training routine or how my prep's going or anything that I shared in this video, please go ahead and drop your question in the comment section and I'll be happy to answer. Just before this video comes to a close, I want to quickly let you know about the work that I do. When I'm not making YouTube videos, recording podcast episodes, or making Instagram content, I work full-time as an online physique coach where I help my clients to accomplish their muscle growth and fat loss goals by optimizing their approach to strength training and nutrition, and I coach them through the process. I've been doing this work for over 7 years and love helping my clients to not only transform their bodies, but ultimately their lives. If you've been considering getting some help with accomplishing your own physique goals, consider hitting the link in the description below where you can learn a little bit more about the work that I do and how I can help you. You can even use that link to schedule a free video consultation with me. If you have any questions about my coaching or how I can help you, just email me at sam@jadeathletics.ca. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.